So it seriously looks like things might be kicking off in Worcestershire, partly because you may remember, or just, well, a couple of videos ago, we did the fact that the Reform Now controlled council in Worcestershire had a 20-minute meeting. And this was heavily, heavily criticised by, of course, the former Conservative council leader, where these Reform people accused the previous administration of like irresponsible spending, to which they stood up and went, okay, if we have spent irresponsibly, show us, prove it, show the evidence we have spent irresponsibly. And of course, they couldn't. Why? Because they were there, and that meeting, that first council meeting, was there to discuss the accounts. That was the scheduled agenda item on that meeting, to which the Reform cabinet member was not there, didn't submit his report, meaning that the main agenda item could not be discussed. That's why the meeting lasted basically 20 minutes. And as was said last time, a complete waste of time. Because how can you discuss something of a meeting when the agenda item is about the accounts and the guy presenting the report on those accounts is not even there? Right? That's the real story. That's the real story. The absolute incompetence of Reform to be to put themselves in that position, because they are the ones in charge. They are purely incompetent. And now, here's the fun part, because I hope this would happen, because I'll tell you what, local newspapers and local reporting services, always starved for news, they love a good back and forth between councillors. Well, guess what? The council leaders, the leader and the deputy, have now come out to try and defend their 20-minute meeting. Right? And quite frankly, once again, it's pathetic, it's ridiculous, and they try to say, oh, but this other councillor also missed meetings, which we'll get onto as well. And he has a far, far better explanation of why he wasn't at these meetings compared to their Reform guy, who's basically currently off on his jollies. So let's dig into this. Because, oh boy, this, I think, Worcestershire here, again, I've looked it up now, so I should be pronouncing it right. It's Worcestershire. Why do you have to like spell it like that? Anyway, Worcestershire here really seems like things could get quite heated, and it could be quite turned into a very interesting back and forth, as it will probably be for some of these other councillors, because remember, sometimes in the case certainly here, they were part of the same party at one point. So, you know, interesting things, I'm sure, will be banded about, and I'm sure there will be lots of more interesting back and forths to come as well. So, as always, before we do kick off into this, please do remember to click on the like, the share button, and of course, down below, there's the Patreon page, there's the Buy Me Coffee link where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button down below as well. And of course, as always, there is the YouTube membership button down below as well. And of course, it is Wednesday, so there will be a new video for the Patreon members and of course the YouTube members down below as well. And if you want to see that video, like I say, click on the links down below and you'll not only get access to that video, but also the other videos I've made as well. So let's crack on then into this and find out about this war of words erupting in Worcestershire. So, off we go to here. Now, the council leader now hitting back at criticism of their 20-minute meeting. So let's see what the defense of their 20-minute meeting is. So, Worcester's Reform leadership has now hit back after criticism of their first cabinet meeting which lasted just 20 minutes. So, they have said that this short cabinet meetings were, of course, a regular feature now of the previous Tory administration, and that is quote, not how long the meeting lasts, it is what you achieve. So, okay, let's judge them by that. What did that last 20-minute meeting actually achieve? Well, it achieved nothing, because not only was the meeting meant to be about the accounts of the council, but your cabinet member for finance was not there, was meant to be presenting a report, which also he did not submit either. So it also could not mean it was discussed, meaning that 20 minutes was still an absolute waste of time because it achieved nothing. So even by their own defense, in their own words, that 20-minute meeting was a waste of everyone's time and did not achieve anything. Anyway, let's continue to see how they also try and defend this. Council leader Joanne Monk said, "We of course welcome scrutiny, but it must be applied fairly." I would say what the criticism they've got from this is pretty fair. It's pretty fair. But of course, they continued saying the Conservative administration held a 20-minute cabinet meeting on October 24th, 2024, and no one, of course, batted an eyelid, and there was no criticism. Yeah, what was actually discussed in that meeting? What went on? Are you going to tell us about that? Because apparently it's not how long the meeting lasts; it's all about what you achieve. Are you going to tell us about that? No, of course they don't. Anyway, she continued saying they, of course, didn't even bother to hold their first cabinet meeting after winning the 2021 elections. They cancelled this important meeting just now as the country was emerging now from the pandemic, and there was lots to do. Nobody, of course, complained at the time. Maybe because, as you point out, we were all emerging from the pandemic at that time. Was that meeting held online? Maybe it was. You don't clarify that. Reform UK, of course, said that there were at least 10 different cabinet meetings lasting 45 minutes or less during the 4 years of the previous council's Tory administration. Really? So, for the past 4 years, there were 10 cabinet meetings lasting under 45 minutes or less. What was discussed in those cabinet meetings? Because again, judging by their standard that, oh yeah, we're open to scrutiny, but it's got to be applied fairly. Okay, what was discussed at those cabinet meetings? Don't hear that. Because when you look at their 20-minute cabinet meeting, as we pointed out to begin with, meant to be about accounts, the finance guy was not there. He was meant to submit a report, did not submit that report. Hence, that entire meeting, if we are judging it by it's not about length, it's about what you achieve, that meeting achieved nothing. Because there was nothing to discuss, because nothing could be talked about, because the report had not been submitted. Not only that, as we also covered, they just refused to answer basic questions about other accountability issues. So again, they aren't the biggest fans of transparency. Anyway, the deputy leader, David Taylor, also weighed in on this and said that it is not how long the meeting lasts, it's about what you achieve. We are delivering clear, firm decisions without dragging things out for show. Really, what decision did you make at that meeting? Because as far as I can tell, you didn't make any decision. So once again, what did you achieve in that meeting? You didn't achieve anything. And that is by their own standards that they are apparently measuring that by. He continued, though, we said, we do not need to talk now for the sake of appearances or to show off now for social media. There are important things that people elected us on huge numbers to focus on. Well, why did you not also discuss those? Why did you not also table those to be talked about in that cabinet meeting. Maybe it would have lasted longer than 20 minutes if you had done that. But of course, now continuing the fact that they are trying to blame the previous Tory administration on Worcestershire, sorry. Anyway, so Reform UK now also point out that Adam Kent, the leader of the Conservative group on the council, missed about 22% of the cabinet meetings that he was expected to attend during his 4-year tenure. So for 4 years, he missed about 22% of his cabinet meetings. Now, why, once again, did he miss those cabinet meetings? Because your guy missed his cabinet meeting because he was on holiday. Worth pointing that out. Cllr Monk then also continued, saying that some of the loudest complaints are, of course, coming from people who didn't even show up reliably when they were in power. Really, he missed 22% of cabinet meetings. How many meetings, of course, does that 22% actually represent? You notice also they're not pointing that out. Because depending on how many cabinet meetings there were, that could be 5, 6, who knows? Maybe you should actually tell us rather than the percentage amount. Probably because the percentage amount sounds larger than the actual number of cabinet meetings missed. Again, very sneaky way to do that. Anyway, Monk continued, saying, "We are not, of course, here to waste time and waffle." Well, if that's how you were judging your 20-minute cabinet meeting, then yeah, sure, you didn't waste time and yeah, you didn't waffle. Anyway, Monk continued, saying, "We are here to work, to make decisions, and to get things done for Worcestershire." Again, it didn't seem to do that in that meeting by your own standard. But of course, Councillor Kent from the Conservatives responded to this. He said, Councillor Kent said, "Like, of course, all cabinet members, I occasionally have clashes and meetings now due to other conflicting responsibilities. Those also now include important roles, like including representing Worcestershire on the County Council of the West Midland Employers Board and West Mercia Energy. As an experienced councillor will understand, diary clashes are inevitable in public service, and prioritisation must be made based on the agenda and the relevance now to one's cabinet portfolio." So, again, that is entirely reasonable. That, hey, I've got a clash, can't really attend the cabinet meeting. My portfolio is not really going to be discussed. It's not on the agenda. So I can say I won't attend that cabinet meeting because I've got another commitment which is more important to attend. That is a more reasonable excuse. And you'll notice they ain't trotting out the guy that was for finance. Where was he? Where was he in all this? Anyway, when, of course, the reports fall outside my remit, I was expected, as you would, to prioritise other now critical meetings to serve the county's wider interest. This is why the key point in the cabinet meeting last week was the Reform cabinet member for finance was not present to put forward their report. Councillor Kent also pointed out that his overall attendance at council meetings in the past 4 years has actually been 87%, compared with the 63% for Cllr Monk. So, over the past 4 years, his council meeting attendance was at 87% compared to Cllr Monk, who had 63%. Barely just over half compared to the guy he's criticising, who had an 87% attendance record over 4 years compared to 63. He also went on to add, "The issue, of course, is not the length of a cabinet meeting, as I've attended other short meetings with very simple short topics, but this was not a simple topic meeting. When you have the opportunity to, of course, set out a vision, address your allegations of irresponsible spending, and then do not even discuss the detail or answer any questions, regardless of the simplicity, then I believe that now is bordering on recklessness and shows that there is no thought now for the residents of Worcestershire." That guy may be a conservative, but I'll tell you what, I agree with everything you said there. You are going to get conflicts of interest as a councillor, and you do have to prioritize which meeting you are going to attend. This happens not only just in public life, but in every time in businesses and things like that. This happens all the time. And I agree with him. I don't agree with the reform people, because if you go by their metric to how you judge that meeting, what did that meeting actually achieve? Absolutely nothing. So, yeah, absolute ridiculousness. Ridiculousness on this. And the comments are pointing this out quite succinctly as well. Is someone saying it is deeply, of course, disappointing to see such a brief and unproductive meeting, particularly now from the newly elected leader who claims now to be representing change under the reform banner. Being, of course, new to the job and to government is no excuse. If anything, it demands now even greater effort and preparation. Reform UK promised to be different, not to deliver more of the same ineffective politics. Please get it together and start actually demonstrating competence and accountability that the public expects. Again, not too surprised about this. And again, most of the people are basically calling them out. Like, oh yeah, you tried to defend yourself. You aren't doing this very well. This is actually quite good. So this is someone responding to their explanation. I think Reform's explanation will be very indicative of how they will now deal with future complaints and negative comments towards the way that they'll be conducting themselves and how they'll be running the council. They will be confrontational, evasive, and not accountable, dismissive, and then will absolutely absolve themselves from any responsibility if things go wrong or they aren't up to scratch. It'll be a case of we'll do things the way we want, so tough. But then again, I don't think reform voters will actually care. So, this is good. With someone saying about that it's not how long the meeting lasts, it's about what you achieve. With someone saying, having watched the meeting, no questions were answered, and the cabinet members responsible for the report wasn't there. So it seems like nothing was achieved. Time to resign by your own standards. Yeah, again, interesting the fact that they are all being called out. Absolutely all being called out for that. So it is good to see there that their nonsense in Worcestershire is not flying. That they are being like called out by people on this, and that it is not flying, and that is good. That is a very good thing to see. So that is good at least for that. But that will mean, bad things for them in the future. And probably expect us, if this is how they respond to this, like, hey, you had a 20-minute meeting where your guy didn't turn up, nor did he, submit the report that he was meant to present or anything like that. So this meeting basically achieved nothing. And this is their response to this. Imagine what their criticism and future outbursts, because that's probably what it is going to come down to, is going to be like in the future. I have to say, Worcestershire Council, or County Council here, gone up in my watch list because, oh boy, things can get very interesting, very interesting in this council when things start to go wrong. So, as always, if you are from Worcestershire, please do tell me what you think about this, because I think things could get very spicy in the not too distant future. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.